So, welcome to 2023, the official start of the new year, which means that I can actually know for sure what my best and worst books of 2023 were. Now, I don't have enough worst books of the year to fill it, or at least that I can remember, to fill out a whole video, so I'm just going to combine them in this video. So I'll talk about one of my... So I'll just quickly mention my worst books of the year, and then we'll get on to the positive stuff. So we'll get the negative out of the way first. And so I will put the books on the screen because I don't want to have to go to my bookshelves and find them all. Anyway, so I have my notes on my phone. I've written them down. Okay, so one of my worst or least favourite books of the year is Furthermore by Tahereh Mafi. I read this towards the beginning of the year, and basically I DNF'd this book because the main character was so annoying. She did nothing but whine for the whole time and also not a lot had happened in the small amount I read before I just put it down because I couldn't handle the main character anymore. I can't even remember any of the characters' names, so we're going to move on from that one. And the next two on this list will probably be unpopular opinions, but the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I did not like this book. There wasn't anything wrong with it. It was the characters were fine and all that. It was mainly it was extremely boring. 150 I got 150 pages in and then just stopped reading it because it was so boring, nothing had happened, and it was meant to be a horror, but not a lot of horror things had happened. And so yeah, I just didn't vibe with this book too well, and so I don't think Grady Hendrix is for me because this book was really bad. At least for me, not for other people. Right. And another least favourite for me this year, which again might be an unpopular opinion, is A Little Life by... I can't remember who it's by. But yeah, basically it was 700 pages and there was so many character jumps, and there was just... It didn't focus enough on one character, and and it wasn't even a clear enough separation for me to know which character I was following at that point. And so, yeah, I did not like this book. And now we move on to the ones that I actually I actually had a proper hate for, rather than just thinking they were boring or, not for me. The first one is Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah. Now, in this book, I hated every character in this book. All of them. But the main two I didn't like was Tully as a character, because she was selfish, and she always made the main character Kate do all the apologizing whenever they fought, even if it was Tully's fault. And the other character that I really didn't like was Kate's daughter. She was whiny and a brat when she was just trying to be a parent to her daughter, and she would always go to her Aunt Tully to get told something else, to get told the wrong thing, or to go against Kate and to go against her mum's wishes. And yeah, Oh, and the other thing I hated, the way that they ended this book. Instead of having the characters instead of having like Tully and Kate's daughter have some kind of actual character redemption arc in the story, they just went with the. I'm gonna get spoilers, but I really don't care if you wanna if you don't want to listen, skip ahead. Basically, the ending is instead of giving Tully and Kate's daughter actual character development, they just decide to give the main character. They just decide to give Kate cancer, and so it's like, oh, mom's dying now. Now I have to put this aside so that I can say goodbye to my mom. I mean, come on. That is a cliche ending at a stretch if I've ever seen one. Like, I legit just... the story would have had a saving grace if it didn't just do the cop-out ending of just making the character be dying to restore all the relationships. And now we have my number one worst book of the year. Like, this book I hated from start to finish. I did finish the whole thing, but I really didn't want to. And that book is The Devil Wears Prada. Now, this book, you want to see insulting stereotypes, you want to see insulting gay stereotypes, insulting racial stereotypes, and insulting everything stereotypes, read this book. Like, there is not one page on this book that did not have an insulting stereotype of some kind in it. Like, and, yeah. Like, it didn't have, like, the way that Stanley Tucci's character is written in it, that yes, he was gay, but he didn't just outrightly show it. No, they just went the route of gay stereotype and racial stereotypes, and we're gonna mix them together and make this make sense. And also, every character in this book was unlikable. Except, like, the only character I actually sort of liked was Emily, because she was nice to Andrea. But yeah, she was not in the book. She was nice to Andrea, like she was an ally for Andrea. But yeah, in the movie they changed it, and I think that was well done. But yeah, in this book, none of the characters were likable. The boyfriend and the best friend of Andy were, I guess, they were still as unaccepting of the job as they were in the movie. Miranda, she, in the movie, she at least had some redeemable qualities about her, but not in the book. But in the book, they just took all of the charm and, like, vulnerableness that Meryl Streep brought to the character, and they tossed it out the window. And also, Andy's character in this book is not, like, all she's doing is complaining about a job she didn't have to take. Like, at least in the movie, she eventually just went with the job, didn't complain, and just did the job. No, in the book, Andy never stops complaining about this job that she didn't have to take in the first place. So, my God, was that an unlikable... My God, did I hate that book. Okay, now let's move on to the positives. And we'll talk about my favorites of the year. And at the bottom, like, yeah, I'm going to do these in an order because I've written them down in the order that I enjoyed them. And so the bottom of the list, or like my number 10, is Little and Lion by Brandon Colbert. I read this book in like 2 weeks before the end of the year, and like the way that it's written, it is actually a well done story. The relationships between the characters are amazing and beautiful. And you've got a nice mix of rap in it. You've got you've got LGBT rap, you've got disability rap, you've got mental health rap. And like, you've got these characters that are like questioning certain parts of themselves, like, can I live with this? Can I live with this? No, okay. Basically, the brother of the main character is bipolar, and so he's learning to live with that. So he's learning to figure out who he is with that, and our main character is coming to terms embracing her sexuality while also looking after her stepbrother with bipolar. And so I actually related quite a bit to this book because I had my own stuff going on in my head, but I was also forced to look after my brother, in a sense. So anyway, I would recommend reading this book. It's not very long, and it's quite well written, and it's a great exploration of coming to terms with this thing about yourself. And then the next one on my list is actually a non-fiction, and it's You Will Not Have My Hate by... Hold on, who is it by? It's right next to me. Yeah, You Will Not Have My Hate by Antonie Lee Rice. I probably butchered that. Yeah, anyway, this book... This is the one I'm going to hold up. Yeah, this book is about this man whose wife is killed in the terrorist bombing that happened at the Bataclan Theatre in Paris, and he now has to raise his kid alone. And it's called You Will Not Have My Hate because instead of like being angry at the terrorists who killed his wife, he is trying to be positive about it and just be able to tell the story of his wife to his son, who has just lost his mother, and it's about like accepting your family as it is. And I just think that that's a great quick story. There's no hate behind it. It's just a story about family and what happens when a tragedy like this happens. Instead of it being about hate, it's a love story to his wife instead of a hate story to the terrorist who killed his wife. And then the next one on my list is the storied life of A.J. Thackeray. Now, this story started off as just like, oh, it's an average story. And then it took a route and then the way that the ending was written in, it took a route that I proper felt inside. And I loved this story. It can't be any higher up on the list than where it is. But yeah, but this story was like so well written. It's basically a story about this guy who gets a child left on the doorstep and becomes a single dad. Then he has to just channel his life with this new life of being a parent. And like I respect that because most stories are about single mothers instead of single fathers, and I feel like that needs to be focused on more. But yeah, the writing in this book was so well done. It's about this guy, he owns a bookstore and he's now also raising this child of his, and like there is so much more to the story if you read it, but just the story itself is like extremely well done, and just everything about this story is lovely, and I recommend you check it out. And then the next one on my list I have is A Lifetime of Impossible Days by Tabitha Bird. This story is about this woman who can time travel into different parts of her life who can time travel into different parts of her life and see herself in like 3 different ages. And and also as you can also interact with this version of herself. So, like, yeah. So there, yeah. She sees it. She has interaction with with herself as an old woman, as a little kid, and somewhere in the middle. I can't remember the exact age. But yeah, this book's just the way that it was done just stuck with me, and yeah. So yeah. Yeah, so this book, it is such a complicated story. It is such like a complicated and full-on story, and like you learn like why she keeps going back to these certain ages in her life specifically, instead of, yeah, like she has her reasons why she keeps being drawn to these other ages of herself, because each of these ages is when something significant in her life happens. And so she has to figure out what exactly that is. And just the way that it was written was just like very well done. And it basically ends with like all three of these timelines of herself meeting. Like the childhood and the middle. Yeah, I can't exactly remember which ages it was, but yeah. Basically all three of them end up, for the climax of this book, all three of them end up together, and they have to make sure that their lives don't get affected by by the events that has led up to this. Oh my god, it's so well done. And the next one on my list is Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. Now, this was my first ever Brandon Sanderson book, and I read this book near the start of the year. But it is probably the only book that I read throughout the year that like legitimately made me laugh out loud for most of it. It's basically a fiction book written as a non-fiction story. So it's like you're being told the story of this adventure from the perspective of Alcatraz. I can't remember his last name. But yeah, but basically you're getting told this story, but it's written in a way that it's a non-fiction. And yeah, so it's very well done. It's like it's so funny, and it's a middle grade, so you get the whole it's a middle grade, but it is so well written and such an enjoyable story, and I will be continuing the rest of that series. And it's convinced me to try and give some of Brandon Sanderson's like more popular works a chance. Yeah. Okay, I guess I should tell you what Alcatraz is about, shouldn't I? Yeah, Alcatraz versus Evil Librarians is about this kid. This kid, Alcatraz, is essentially an orphan. And then a family member of his tracks him down at this orphanage and takes him with him to his home, and then he ends up finding out that he's got this legacy and he has to guard something from the Evil Librarians. I can't remember the full details of it because it was towards the start of the year. But yeah, so he's got this whole hidden legacy that he didn't know about, and his family, and he gets brought into a family. But yeah, it's so well done. It's kind of like, yeah, it's a middle grade fantasy and sci-fi book, but I really recommend checking that one out because even if it's not one of the best, it is definitely one of the most enjoyable books you will probably find. And then the next one that I have is another surprising read that I didn't expect to be so high up, but Pivot Point by Casey West. Now, I had never read a Casey West book before. Basically all of the authors on this favorites list I've never read from before. But Pivot Point, it's kind of like a semi sci-fi fantasy book, and it's about this girl whose name I can't remember. Actually, I'll just go get the book because it's right on that shelf behind where the camera is. Okay, her name is Addison, and yeah, she's in this world where every like child has some kind of unique ability in school, and she and her ability is a searcher, so she can like see, so like say she has a choice to make, she can see the possible outcome of whichever choice she makes. And basically that's the premise of this story, is her parents getting divorced and she has to choose who to live with. So so basically she takes herself into both scenarios. Like she gets the what if she chooses her mum, what if she chooses her dad, and yes, it's just very well done. It's a cute little story that I would recommend. That this, out of all the books, this and Alcatraz are probably the two that I would recommend to people. But yeah, it's a cute story, just about. It's a story about choosing between your parents, and it's also a story about friendship as well. One on my list is Almond by, I can't remember the author's name. Because it's a Japanese author, but I will have the picture on the screen. This is basically a story about this kid who was born with a small. Was it a? Hold on. I need to get this book because I need to confirm what this one was about. Yeah. So anyway, this is. Yeah, he was born with a brain condition that makes it hard for him to feel emotions of any kind. And eventually he does actually make a friend who has his own issues as well. And yeah, so it's just a story. It actually just turns into a story about friendship and how one friend can change everything about your life. And I just think the way that it was written was like really like it was like really impressive, really well done. And yeah, so I just think it was a cute little story that more people should read. And then we get into and now we're at my top 3. Now, number 3 in this spot is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I never thought I would actually read this story, but I had so many people on BookTube talking about it, and it got recommended to me by some friends in the community, and I'm so glad that I read this book. It's another time travel book. I don't really think I have to go too much detail about it, so I'll just give a short summary, because me and summaries aren't the best. But yeah, so basically Kindred is about this woman who is living in present day and then suddenly finds herself taken back to 1984, and she basically she has to make sure that, like, she got sent back there to help like her ancestors, or she was like drawn to there because of her ancestors, but she also can't change anything because it might affect the outcome and she might have never been born. And like, so it's just a very well done time travel story. It's interesting how you can change the world's it's just interesting seeing the back and forth between the present day life that she has and the struggles in the past that she had that when she went back there that she had as a black woman in 1964 compared to present day. And yeah, it's a very well done story. And then my second favourite book of the year is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, I did not expect to actually have a classic as my favourite for this year. But out of all the classics that I read this year, this is the one that stuck with me the most. And yeah, so it's basically about this guy who he gets a picture painted of himself. He wishes for eternal life, and then the pitcher ends up taking his soul in return, and yet just the way that he like physically fights with himself about about all of this, and he just has the inner struggles of like moral, and it's got morals into question, and like, is it really worth the money and the eternal life if you're basically alone and doing all these choices that might be morally questionable. And it was very well done, very clever, and I would recommend reading that. And then my number one book of the year is A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. This book, it's a cute, charming little story about this guy who, his wife's died, he's alone, and he just wants to... Wait, let me check if it's still recording. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a story about this guy. His wife's passed away, and he basically just wants to die at this point. And then this family moves in, and he makes friends with the family, and he suddenly has to question whether he does still want to die, or whether he wants to make a life with this family. Yeah, or whether he wants to make a life with, and give himself, and like let himself have this friendship with his family. And yeah, so it's basically if the Disney movie Up was a book first. Yeah, Fredrik Backman, I will probably read more of his stuff. I did read one more of his stuff at Christmas. Didn't like that one as much, but I will give him another go. But anyway, so this has been my best and worst books of the year, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the new year. Bye!